Hey everybody, it's Andy Kushner, host of the Wedding Biz, and this is another episode of The Next Level, in which I have a guest co-host, and together we discuss the interview of the week and talk about some of the advice, tactics, tips that we've learned that we can all apply to bring our own businesses to the next level. And before I introduce today's illustrious guest co-host, I want to mention last week's interview, and that was part 2 with Michelle Rego, destination planner and designer based out of New York City, who works all over the world. Michelle and I went into a very deep dive. It was a wonderful conversation, so I urge you all to check it out. And on the next level, we had Jennifer Stein, co-founder and editor-in-chief of Destination I Do magazine, as my guest co-host to talk about my interview with Michelle Rego. So both of those episodes were really great. And again, I suggest you all check them out. So today's guest co-host is none other than Greg Finck, a wonderful, very talented, gifted photographer based in Paris, traveling all over the world. I interviewed Greg on the Wedding Biz. It was released on December 16th. Hey, Greg, thanks for joining me on the show.
Hi, Andy. Thank you so much. It's always such a pleasure.
Yes, and your episode was a very popular one, so we're going to put it in the show notes so people can check it out.
It's great to hear.
Yeah. So the person who Greg and I are going to speak about today, the interview last Monday was with Alejandra Poupel from Alejandra Poupel Events. She lives in Paris and caters to an international clientele, including Chinese, Middle Eastern, Russian, American, and so much more. She plans and designs for a very wide variety of events, again, all over the world at a very high level. Greg, I thought that it was, I think, near the beginning of the interview when we were starting to talk about dealing with different clients, from a cultural perspective. And she said, we are a service business, and so we have to treat different cultural clients differently based on their expectations. So creating a business that is tailor-made, depending on the culture of whoever she is speaking to, is what we're talking about. You are doing the same with your photography. How did you feel about that?
Yeah, Alejandra is totally right on that. And I think one of her strengths on the market right now in Europe is that she can deal with clients from the US, with clients from China, with clients from the Middle East. And I think she adapts so much to that by having a multicultural team around her. First of all, I think she mentioned that she speaks 6 languages.
That's right.
Which is crazy to me.
Amazing.
But the other thing is that I know for a fact that she has a team around her of people specializing in certain type of clientele. Like she will have an assistant from Lebanon. She will have another one who speaks Chinese. So it's amazing how much she can deal with such a variety of clients. And she's totally right about the fact that you need to know the habits and the expectations of each one of them. For example, a Chinese client will want a tea ceremony before the wedding, so you have to know how this is going to happen, what's going to happen during that ceremony, and you need to know the names of each aspect of the ceremony, and she's very strong with that. So I totally agree with her, and she's mentioning the fact that she's throwing tailor-made events and tailor-made parties, and I'm totally with her on that.
Yeah, it was interesting. I remember some of the examples that I wasn't aware of, like when she talked about Middle Eastern culture, how the guests really dress. I mean, go all the way, and so the bride has to go all out in order to stand out, and how the Middle Easterners like cozy and warm kind of an atmosphere with couches instead of chairs to be like living rooms. And then when she's working with Chinese clients, they like show up a half hour early. When she works with Cuban, they show up an hour and a half late. And, and then, Arabic weddings, the bride's entrance is an enormous moment. I mean, and, more than even others. And it was just really interesting to hear her talk about and her ability to dive in and learn about the differences. I can't imagine what it was like building her business. I mean, that, what is it like for you when you're dealing with different cultures? Obviously, it's the same situation, right? You have to learn all of these different traditions and rituals, don't you?
Totally. But once again, I think one of her key differentiation is that she deals so well with all of his culture. I cannot say that I have this variety of clients. I mostly focus on American clients and Asian clients.
Mm.
It's not that I don't want to shoot Middle Eastern weddings, but for some reason so far, I don't think that my aesthetic is totally in line with what they expect. A very good example of that is at Arabic wedding, for example. Most of the event is going to happen at night when the light is down, and that's not my style. My style is very organic. It's going to be during the day. Everything's going to be outdoor. So on on my side, for my business, I mostly focus on American weddings and Asian weddings because that's my aesthetic. But she is so strong with dealing with all type of clients and knowing all of their specificities. As you mentioned, the bride entrance in an Arabic wedding is probably the most important aspect of the wedding. The fashion in an Arabic wedding is going to be so important. Like the bride's going to change like 5 or 6 times, and
Wow.
you can spend most of the day waiting for the bride. So she can be late no matter she's the bride, she does whatever she wants.
That's right.
So, I mean, if you don't know that, it can put a lot of pressure on your shoulder and the agenda can get out of hand. So she's so strong with that.
Yeah, she is. Also, she spoke about this is interesting. I've heard this a few times on the show, but the way she said it was differently that you also want to consider creating an experience that have Instagrammable moments for not just for us, but also for the client. And, I know that the responsibility in terms of expressing that is going to be fall on someone like you, the photographer. How do you feel about that?
I totally agree with it. I mean, Instagram has become such a huge part of our business for everybody. I mean, whether you are a photographer, a florist, a designer, your work needs to be on Instagram. And of course, we have very private clients, and sometimes we cannot show these clients, but we will still try to show the design of a party, the design of a ceremony, the design of a reception. So, I mean, on my side, the way I try to help the designers and the planners I work with is that I always try to think about shooting for them as well. Of course, I will shoot for my client first, but I will also shoot for the wedding planner. So if I have to double one shot, I totally will. And I will be, okay, this is the ceremony shot or the reception shot for the client. And this one is going to be the one for the planner
Oh, interesting.
that they will be able to show on Instagram because I kind of know what they expect
Mm.
to show on Instagram. So I mean, our vision as a photographer right now has become very much holistic in the sense where we have to think about everybody who is around the wedding. Of course, it's always the client first, always, but maybe you're going to run that extra mile to shoot for the wedding planner, the designer, the cake designer, the florist. Everybody wants to have its work displayed right now. And I think that's what's going to make an amazing difference in your ability to network as a wedding vendor. Do you
Yes.
provide a good piece of work for your clients, but also for all of the people who have contributed to make this event an amazing event?
Yeah, I think about this too from the perspective, like in terms of my music business. Even for me, I train the leaders of each band and the front singers to understand that aspect as well. For example, to set up shots for the photographer, and if there's a videographer, to set it up. There maybe like I used to be in the band and no longer, but when I was. I would at certain moments I would see the photographer near the stage and I'd say, hey, I'd urge him, I'd say, or her, come up here on the stage and just trust me, come up on stage. And then I'd say to the audience on the microphone, in the middle of a song, hey, everybody wave up here, and
Yeah.
that was one of the best shots. And same thing with video. And so I think it's important for all of us to just be aware that we're also there for each other and that this is a business and we need to promote it as long as we're not hurting the client, and let's do it. And as a matter of fact, my example for the photographer, I'm helping the photographer get a great shot, but it's also a great shot for the client, to be in their album.
Absolutely. And I think it's totally the photographer's scope to do this and to serve all of the wedding vendors that are here. But it's also a very fine line Because of course, if it serves the client, it's totally fine. But sometimes you don't want to be caught uh, like doing like promotion. I mean, shooting promotion material for like this vendor or that vendor. So it's a very fine line. But I mean, today we cannot ignore it.
Right.
As a photographer, as a videographer, everything goes through the images that we produce. All of these images are going to go online, and this is going to be marketing material for all of these vendors. So we have to do it.
Also, Greg, before we started to record, you had mentioned that one of the highlights of the interview for you that stuck out was how she talked about how at least 50% of this is business.
Yes.
As compared to the creative. And, I know from your own interview when I had you on the show, you had a business background, which you were able to apply not only to your own business, and your career has just exploded like a rocket, but also your fiance, Reem Erdaki, her business with bridal gown design. Could you say more about Alejandra's point about really needing to be aware that this is at least 50% business?
Yeah, she said it's at least 50%, and I'm totally with her on that. I think the base of everything is having an eye, having an aesthetic for design, for elegance, and mastering your craft. And she does it very well. But then what's going to make the difference in making it to the high end market is your ability to run your business, to network, to talk to a client. I mean, she speaks 6 languages, so she can basically handle any client in the world. She's very business savvy. She said that marketing and PR is not her strength. I'm not sure I agree. I agree with her on that. She's so amazing in communication. I've heard of Alejandra for the first time, I think 3 years ago, 4 years ago, and she made it very quickly to the top. So all of these aspects, which are business aspects, totally made a difference. So I think we live in a world of artists. I mean, the business industry is populated with artists. Otherwise, we will not be here. But what makes the difference between someone who's going to make it and someone who's going to stay average is the business capabilities.
Yes. When I hear you speak, I'm thinking about how it's always been important, obviously, for an artist to have some sense of business. But I think back again, for me, I associate more easily with music. And I think back to all the artists, Billy Joel, Elton John, all these different artists who did not have much of a business sense and had to trust other people way too much to the point where they got ripped off, stolen from, and had to later develop that business sense. And how in today's environment, there's not even a chance for that. If we as artists don't decide to educate ourselves about the business aspect, we're not even going to get off the ground at all. I think it's more critical, and it's one of the reasons I started this podcast was to help educate, because it's essential, isn't it? You can't make it without it.
I'm totally with you on that, and you cannot imagine the number of endless discussions that we have with Rim, my fiance, on that topic, because I've been working with her since a year now, but she's had her company for 10 years. She doesn't know anything about business. She defines herself as a 100% artist, and she's an artist. She's an amazing artist, but she doesn't know how to use an Excel spreadsheet.
Neither do I.
Which is fine, but you're talking about being stolen from or being ripped off. She has been stolen from so many times over the past decade because she associated with the wrong persons, because she didn't know anything about business. So she was like, okay, these are the keys of the truck. I will trust you with that because you know about business and I don't.
Right.
But if it's not the right person, you're going to lose a lot of money. You're going to lose a lot of trust. And this is one of the main reasons why I got into her company, because we're going to be a husband and wife. So the trust is here. But I'm struggling with her every day, saying, you cannot just say that you're not business savvy because you come from design or because you're an artist. In the world we live in, you need to have some basics.
Right. Yeah, it's so critical. Also, we were talking again before I hit the record button about how Alejandra talked about just working, how destination weddings are skyrocketing in particular, and how, for example, when there's intermarriages, they in particular want to have a destination wedding because it's middle ground. For example, when a Portuguese marries a Chinese, rather than have it in China or Portugal, they'll do it in a different place where, it's like middle ground, like Europe. And Europe is just exploding with these destination weddings. It's such a big market. What do you think about that?
I totally agree. I mean, one of the reasons why it's doing quite well for me is because I am based in Europe right now. And Italy and the south of France are such huge markets right now. I mean, I cannot count the number of weddings happening in Lake Como every weekend, in Puglia, in Tuscany, on the French Riviera, in Provence, in Paris. I mean, there are so many markets right here, right now. And as she mentioned, what's amazing with one of the trends in the wedding industry is that some of his clients, they will just not have one wedding, but they will have many. A lot of my Asian clients, they will have one weddings in Asia with like 1,000 guests, which is going to be
Wow.
more of a show in a
Yes.
convention center because they have to invite like so many people, but then they still want like a very personalized and tailor-made experience, and that they will choose to have a destination wedding in Europe with maybe only 100 people, but they will truly enjoy it. They will invest money on the design. They want something really crafted and beautiful. So it's just amazing for the business and the industry, the fact that they will have many weddings.
Yes, absolutely. Well, that is all the time we have for today. I want to thank everyone for listening. And Greg, thank you so much for being on the next level with me. I love your input. Really appreciate it.
No, thank you, Andy. It's always a pleasure.
Yeah, and let me mention how to find more information on both Alejandra and Greg. First of all, with Alejandra, her site is alejandrapoupel.com. It's Alejandra, Poupel.com. Her social media handle is Alejandra Poupel Events. You can find all of this in the show notes at theweddingbiz.com. And for Greg, I know that your site is gregfinck.com. That's Greg, Finck, gregfinck.com, and your social media handle is Greg Finck. Again, all of this can be found in the show notes at theweddingbiz.com. Want to urge everyone to follow us at The Wedding Biz on Instagram in particular. And be sure to share this episode today so that other people can also get the education and inspiration and be aware that this exists on the show. I want to mention that next week's episode is going to be a panel that I put together for Bride Lux in New York City. It's a real exciting one. It featured Sylvia Weinstock, Cece Johnson, and Christian Oth. And we discussed the importance of connecting with your clients, the hows and the whys. And there will be no The Next Level with that particular episode because of the nature of it, but I urge you to tune in on Monday. We also want to thank our sponsor before we go, Kushner Entertainment at kushnerentertainment.com. And once again, thank you, Greg.
Thank you so much.
And we'll catch everyone next week on The Wedding Biz.